Okay, I just wanted to go over one of the problems on the question set here. Excuse me. All right, number 6. So a non-binding price floor. So non-binding right here is what makes it important. The way I like to handle price floors is draw your curve first. This is sort of like my little step process. I come out. Okay. You're gonna have a supply curve, a demand curve. I always like to mark everything immediately. You got a demand curve, a supply curve. This is your price axes. This is your quantity axes. This right here is your equilibrium quantity. All right, and notice where the supply curve and the demand curve intersect. That is called equilibrium. The reason it's called equilibrium is because at that price, there is not a need or any sort of pressure for anyone to change their price. At that price and quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. Notice supply will never equal demand. And what I mean by that is because the supply curve, the relationship or the law of supply says as price goes up, quantity goes up, and the law of demand says as the price goes up, demand goes down. So as the price is going up here from $1 to $5, you'll notice the demand curve, quantity demanded is falling. So quantity demanded at a low price, quantity demanded at a high price. So that's an inverse relationship. So when we're talking about a price floor and a price ceiling, if I know something is a price floor, all right, I like to draw it in and it's telling me it's a non-binding price floor. You have to remember with a price floor, for it to be binding, it has to be set above the equilibrium price, right? If it's non-binding, it's going to be set below the equilibrium price. So what you do is I would think here, if I was a non-binding price floor, it'll be set down here. All a price floor says is you cannot charge less than this amount. So if I know this is a floor, I like to say, put an arrow here, which tells me the price has to be above here. If it had been a price ceiling, I would have put an arrow up here and put it down and said the price has to be below here. This price floor does not mean that they have to charge, let's say in equilibrium, the charge is $8, right, for parking. But then there's a binding price floor, a price floor comes in, says, okay, you have to charge at least 2. Well, if I'm charging 8 and I have to charge at least 2, that's not a problem. That's why this is a non-binding price floor. And the only answer here, it's not going to cause a surplus. It's not going to cause a shortage. In fact, it's not going to do anything. Right? The market is still going to clear at $8 and it's still going to clear at the same number of units, quantity supplied, quantity demanded. Right? A non-binding price floor is going to be set at a price below the equilibrium price. That's because it's non-binding. Now let's say they had done something and said, okay, you must charge at least $10. If it were $10, it would no longer be non-binding. Right? So I've drawn a price floor here. They tell me I have a price floor at $10. Again, I like to draw in the price floor. And then I like to do my arrow. If it's a price floor, it has to be above this. All right? So if the equilibrium is 8 and I have to sell at a price of at least 10, then that's going to be a problem. This is going to be considered a binding price floor. Now it's a little confusing, but if it is a price floor, it has to be above you to be binding. Right? If it is a price ceiling, it has to be below you to be binding. So here with a $10, this is binding. This is where you're going to create here. Your quantity demanded is going to be, let's say, 2. 2 people are willing and able to pay $10. But at a price of $10, businesses are going to throw all their resources, their land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship towards selling this good, and they're going to bring 15 to the table. That means I'm going to have a surplus. And if this is a price floor right here, the market's going to stay in disequilibrium. If it were not a price floor, let's just say they arbitrarily decided to charge $10, then we would say that the market's not in equilibrium. Quantity supplied does not equal quantity demanded. There's going to be pressure in the market. These suppliers are going to start cutting their rates, and as they start cutting their rates or the prices, that's going to be movement along the curve. That would be an example. And as the price falls, we're also going to have people who are willing and able to buy it. All right, as the price gets to $9, someone's going to buy one, et cetera, until we get back to equilibrium. Right? That would be in the event that there is not a price floor or a price ceiling, because a price floor and a price ceiling, those are set by law. And so the market will stay in disequilibrium. And the book talks about some of the conditions that happen because of it, all right, specifically with minimum wage. And then the other one is talking about having a price ceiling set on apartments and rent control and how that can create a shortage. All right, I also want to talk on, I believe, sorry, I was going to stop the video. I believe it was also mentioned number 6. Let me go down here. All right, and let me clear up. All right, so for number 6, if the market supply decreases and simultaneously market demand increases, the new equilibrium will show. All right, whenever you have two curves moving at the same time, the easiest thing to do is to write it out here. So it's going to tell me market supply decreases. So I know supply is going to go down. So I like to write down supply, D. And remember, a decrease in supply is going to be a shift of the supply curve back. And then I'm also going to have, at the same time, market demand is going to increase. So market demand is going to increase. So demand is going to increase. All right, now I can draw my curves out. I like to draw my curves out rather than looking at the pictures first. So if I have demand curve here, supply curve here, this is my S, here is my D. Make sure you draw the price, quantity. On this axis, this is the equilibrium price. Let's just give it a number. All right, let's call it at $4. Maybe this is the market for, let's say at $4, we're selling 20 units. And this could be 20,000, 20 million, whatever. At a price of $4, I'm trying to think what's about $4. Let's say notebooks, all right? At the same time, I know that my supply is going to decrease because let's say it's decreasing for any of those reasons that we learned before. There's an increase maybe in cost. Maybe there's some additional regulation, all right? So if my supply curve shifts back, and I'm just going to shift it to S of 1, right? There's also in the book talks about this answer can also change depending on how much of a shift you make in the curve, but it didn't specify which shift was larger. All right, and market demand is going to increase. All right, so I've got to have, here was my original, and so supply curve is going to shift back, demand is going to increase. So think about this, just supply is going to decrease, all right? There's going to be less on the market and more people are going to buy it, all right? If more people are going to buy it, I can say with 100% certainty, the market price is definitely going to go up, all right? So I know the price is going to increase, but what I'm not so sure about is how much is going to get sold? Well, it depends. Did supply just shift back a little bit? Or did supply shift back a lot? Did demand just increase a little bit? Did it did it increase a lot? So if I show demand shifting way out here, my new equilibrium is right here. And I can see that the price is definitely going to increase. And because demand shifted out way more than supply decreased, I'm going to get this huge change in quantity demanded, right? But if my demand, let me undo here. Let's say my demand had shifted just a little bit. If my demand shifted even the tiniest amount here, all right, this is my D2. And notice where D2 intersects that S, excuse me, let me call it D1. Notice where D1 intersects S, this point right here, this is absolutely nothing because this is saying the demand curve shifted, supply curve didn't. So that's why it's important to label your curves. All right, so if demand shifts out to the right and supply shifts back, a decrease in supply, I'm going to be at a new equilibrium where D1 is S1. Notice here, my price went up, but if you notice, because the supply shifted back so little and supply shifted back so large compared to demand, I'm actually going to end up with less quantity being sold. All right, so that's why the answer here is the market price will increase and the quantity exchange could increase, decrease, or remain the same. Probably the easiest thing to do is to just draw the curves out.